Click on the nightlight and get tucked into a comfortable spot. We're about to go on a journey to dreamland, and the best way to get there is by listening to a bedtime story. I'm your host, Nathanial, and this is Sleepy Time Stories. Tonight's tale is a special version of The Nightingale by Hans Christian Andersen. Hans wrote this story over 150 years ago, so we've updated it with modern English and even changed the ending a bit. The Nightingale will take us to the east, to the Emperor's palace. There we will meet a bird who can sing amazing songs. But before we travel to that distant land, we'll need to go and check on our favorite gnome. Picture yourself strolling through an enchanted forest. Little lanterns light your path. The forest is especially vibrant at night. The frogs croak, and the crickets rub their legs together. Iridescent fairy dust drifts down from the trees. Soon you come upon a clearing. A small fire burns in the middle with feathers and hay strewn around it like a bed. Your favorite gnome sits by the fire, roasting s'mores. You ask him if he'll share his s'mores with you. He says, "I think not." You lie down. The flames feel warm on your entire body, from your head to your toes. The gnome notices how comfortable you are and decides to join you. He's tired as well. He's been pushing that cart for oh so very long. He can't help but open his mouth and yawn. You both close your eyes. The gnome expresses how nice it would be to hear a bedtime story. The Nightingale. Many years ago, in a distant land to the east, there was an emperor who had built one of the most exquisite palaces ever seen. It was made entirely of porcelain. In the garden, orchids with silver bells tied to them lined the path. Beyond the flowers were shrubbery and trees from all over the world. The emperor tried to keep one of each species so that everywhere one looked, they would spy something unique. Indeed, everything in the emperor's garden was remarkable, and it extended so far that even the gardener himself did not know where it ended. Those who traveled beyond its limits knew that there was a noble forest with lofty trees sloping down to the deep blue sea. In one of these trees lived a nightingale who sang so beautifully that even the poor fishermen, who had so many other things to do, would stop and listen. Sometimes, when they went at night to spread their nets, they would hear her sing, and they would say, "What a lovely song she sings. It brings warmth to my tired bones." Travelers from every country in the world came to admire the emperor's city, but it was when they heard the nightingale sing that they declared they'd found the emperor's true treasure. On their return home, the travelers related what they had seen, and some wrote books containing descriptions of the town, the palace, and the gardens, but they never forgot to mention the nightingale, which was really the greatest wonder. Now, one of these guidebooks happened to come into the hands of the emperor. Early one morning, as he sat in his golden chair and read about his city, he came to the words, "The nightingale is the most beautiful of all." He stopped and shook his head. "I know nothing of any nightingales. Is there such a bird in my empire? I have never heard of it." Then he called to one of his lords-in-waiting, a nobleman who spent his days at court, drinking tea and gossiping. "There is a bird mentioned here, called a nightingale," the emperor said. "They say it is the best thing in my kingdom. Why have I never been told of it?" "I have never heard of this nightingale," the nobleman replied. "But then again, we don't get a lot of birds at court." The emperor peered at the nobleman for a long moment before saying, "It is the emperor's pleasure that this nightingale sing for him this evening." But of course, the nobleman said, "I will endeavor to find it." "Make sure you do find it." "Yes, sire." The lord-in-waiting bowed several times before ducking into the corridor. "A nightingale," thought the nobleman. "How have I never heard of this feathered fiend?" He spent all afternoon going upstairs and down, through halls and passages, yet none of the other nobles had heard of the bird. So he returned to the emperor and said, "Your Imperial Majesty, it must be a fable invented by those who wrote the books." and with a bit of a chuckle he added, "You cannot believe everything contained in books. Sometimes they're filled with fiction, or what some call the black arts." "But this book was sent to me by the great and mighty Lord of Yamato," the emperor said. "It cannot contain any falsehoods." He pulled his golden sword from its sheath and pointed it at the nobleman. "I will hear this nightingale. She will be here this evening, or you and the whole court shall be trampled upon after supper has ended." The emperor's decree threw the entire palace into disarray. Everyone from the footman to the chambermaid searched for clues of the elusive nightingale. At last, a laundress asked a girl who worked in the kitchen about the bird. "Oh yes," the scullery maid replied. "I know the nightingale quite well. She lives by the seashore. Sometimes I sit in the woods down there and listen to her sing. She always makes me cry. Her songs remind me of my mother's kiss." And so the scullery maid led the laundress and the nobleman and half of the court into the woods. As they went along, a cow began lowing. "Oh," the nobleman said, "now we have found her." "That is only a cow," the scullery maid said. "We are a long way from the nightingale's nest." They walked a bit farther when some frogs began to croak. "Beautiful," the nobleman said. "Now I hear it, tinkling like little bells." "Those are frogs," the scullery maid said. "But we are getting close. I can already hear the sea in the distance." They came out of the woods into a clearing near the deep blue sea, and presently the nightingale began to sing. "Listen, listen," the scullery maid said. The nobleman and half the court smiled as the notes caressed their ears. The maid pointed to a little gray bird perched on a branch. "There she is." "What a beautiful voice," the nobleman said. "Who would have thought she'd be so ordinary?" A young courtier concurred. "I never imagined she'd be a little simple thing like this. I had expected her to have golden feathers adorned with rubies and sapphires." "Little Nightingale," the scullery maid said, raising her voice above the crowd, "our most gracious emperor wishes you to sing for him." "With the greatest of pleasures," the nightingale replied. "May we escort you to the evening's festivities?" "My voice sounds best in the green woods," the little bird said, "but I will grace the emperor with a charming song." The courtiers and servants bustled about the palace, making it as elegant as if they were being visited by a foreign dignitary. In the center of the great hall, a golden perch had been fixed. The nightingale alighted on it. Everyone circled around her and waited for the emperor to appear. Even the scullery maid was given permission to listen, as long as she stood just outside the door where no one might see her. Finally, the emperor strode into the hall. He wore his golden crown and a matching kaftan, made of gold brocaded velvet. After sitting on his throne, he nodded to the nightingale to begin. She started with a flurry of staccato notes, followed by a long sustained one. The song told the story of a marionette made of wood, and how that marionette wished to be real, like the other boys in the village. The nightingale sang so sweetly that tears came to the emperor's eyes and rolled down his cheeks. At the end of the song he stood and clasped his hand to his heart. The court clapped and cheered. Delighted, the emperor declared the nightingale should have his emerald ring be worn as a crown, but the bird declined the honor, saying, "I have seen tears in your eyes. That's quite sufficient honor for me." The next day, the whole palace was abuzz with the talk of the nightingale. It became trendy for people to fill their mouths with water and make a gurgling sound similar to its notes. The emperor proclaimed, "My palace will be the nightingale's home, now and forevermore." She was given a gilded cage, which hung from a chain next to the emperor's throne. 12 servants were appointed to attend to her every need, and once a year she was expected to fly through the streets, singing to the poor, while the 12 servants held her with silken threads fastened to her legs. The whole city spoke of the bird. It became customary when two people met that one would say night, and the other would say gale, and then they would laugh at their own little joke. Then one day, the emperor received a dignitary from a land far to the west. With him he brought a small chest. Across the top was written, "The Nightingale." "Ah," the emperor thought, It's probably another book about my empire and its most celebrated prize. The dignitary opened the chest, unwrapped the silk sheets, and held up a metal bird. The emperor took the bird in his hands and studied it. Rubies and sapphires covered its feathers. Its eyes were made from large diamonds. A winding key jutted out of its side. When the emperor turned the key, the mechanical bird began to sing. "What sorcery is this?" the emperor asked. "No magic here," the dignitary told him. "This is something else, a mechanical nightingale." The dignitary showed the emperor how to wind up the mechanism, and once it was fully wound, it began to move its tail up and down while singing. The emperor clasped his hands together like a child. He asked his courtier to hang a second gilded cage on the other side of the throne. They placed the mechanical bird in that one. All who came to court and heard it sing agreed. It was beautiful, a work of art. "Now they must sing together," the nobleman said. "What a wonderful duet it will be." The emperor asked the 12 servants who attended to the nightingale to get the mechanical bird ready for a concert. One of them polished the jewels that adorned her, while another applied a drop of oil to her gears, while a third wound her up. Soon the mechanical nightingale began to sing a waltz, because that was all she was able to sing. And the emperor nodded at the other nightingale, urging her to join in. And so she tried to harmonize with the mechanical nightingale, but it was of no use. She could only sing in her own natural way. Together, they sounded horrible. "What's wrong with them?" asked the emperor. The servant picked up the mechanical nightingale and wound her up. After a quick listen, they told him, "Nothing's wrong with this one." And so they decided to have them sing alone. The mechanical one put on quite a show with her dazzling jewelry and her perfectly timed waltzes. They loved her so much that they had her play the same tune 36 times in a row. The court would have listened to her all night, but the emperor said, "Let's give the other one a chance to sing." He turned towards the second cage, but it was now empty. Somewhere between the 33rd and the 36th waltz, the real nightingale had slipped out and escaped through the window. "What strange conduct," the emperor said. "What an ungrateful bird," the nobleman added. "It wasn't enough to screw up the duet," said the young courtier. "She had to go and abandon her emperor as well." "Not to worry," the nobleman said. "We still have the mechanical nightingale." Without a second thought, they wound it up. And even though the court had heard the waltz many times before, they cheered as the mechanical nightingale sang its song for the 37th time. Many of the nobles praised the bird in the highest degree, and asserted it was far better than its predecessor. "The other one was so plain Jane," one of them said. "This one has style and is dripping in jewelry." The emperor agreed. The new nightingale was very sparkly, but to be sure he called his music master, a man in charge of all the musicians in the kingdom. "What do you think of this new addition to the court?" The music master said, "My lord and emperor, the old nightingale sang whatever it pleased. It followed no structure. It followed no discipline. It's no wonder it left your side without even a simple goodbye." The emperor nodded as the music master continued, "With the new nightingale, you will always know what it sings. It will never disobey you. It will never fly off when it gets jealous." "You think the old nightingale left because it was jealous?" the emperor asked. "What do you think?" the music master said. "She was worshipped and praised, but then ran away as soon as this new bird came along." "Then it is settled," the emperor said. "The new nightingale will be the official songbird of the kingdom. Music master, set up a concert for this Sunday so all those in the city may hear her." Then he turned to the captain of the royal guards. "Take a hunting party to the woods by the sea and track down that inferior fowl. I banish her from my kingdom. I never want to see her again." The next day, the royal guard found the nightingale sitting on a branch, singing a lovely song. They told her what the emperor had said. "If I am banished," the nightingale told them, "then I will leave." And with that she flew towards the western gates and on to the wind-swept fields. That night, the mechanical bird was placed on a silk cushion close to the emperor's bed. It was given the title Petite Imperial Vocalist. The music master began writing a dissertation about the bird, which eventually grew into a long text, which was very learned, very long, and full of 50-cent words. As the years passed, the emperor and the court never seemed to tire of the mechanical bird's song. If anything, it pleased them more. It was familiar, and they could hum every note. One evening, the emperor lay in bed, listening to the mechanical bird, and in the middle of its singing, a spring in its chest broke, and the bird stopped. Hearing the metal crack, the emperor sat up in bed and looked towards the broken bird. "Send in the royal physician," he yelled. "Our little Nightingale has fallen ill." But the physician was not skilled in the healing of mechanical birds and could do nothing. He laid the Nightingale on its silk cushion and left. Over the next few months, the mechanical Nightingale became dusty and forgotten. 5 years passed, and the emperor was taken ill. The kingdom grieved because it was believed he would not live much longer. The nobles went into their council chamber, and when they came out a few days later, they announced the successor to the throne. Everyone at court was so excited about the new emperor that they forgot the old emperor was still alive. He lay cold and still in his royal bed. A window stood open, and the full moon shone in upon him. In its radiance, he looked so pale that he might as well have been dead. The emperor opened his eyes. There, sitting on his chest, was death. The poor emperor, he was already sickly, but the added weight of death made it so he could scarcely breathe. His eyes darted across the room as he gasped for air. All around the bed, and peeping through the long velvet curtains, were a number of strange heads, some very ugly, and others gentle-looking. These were the emperor's good and bad deeds. They stared at him in the face now that death sat close to his heart. "Do you remember this? Do you recollect that?" they asked one after another. The emperor wiped the beads of sweat from his forehead. "I know nothing of it," he said, shaking his head. "Music, music," he cried. "Bring in the large drum." But no one could hear him. All the court was away, celebrating the success of his successor. The strange heads around the bed groaned on, and Death's hollow gaze grew colder as he listened to all they said. "Music, music," the emperor shouted. "Golden bird, sing, pray sing." But the mechanical bird remained silent. No one knew how to fix it, and therefore it could not sing a single note. Death leaned closer to the emperor. The air became crisp, and the room felt like a cold coffin. With what little strength the emperor had left, he threw the mechanical bird. It cracked and broke against the chamber wall. And suddenly, from the open window, came the sound of sweet music. There sat the other Nightingale. She sang with all her heart. The blood in the emperor's veins flowed more rapidly, and his cheeks became flushed. Death turned and stared at the little bird in the window. "Little bird, why do you sing so sweetly? His bad deeds outweigh his good." The little Nightingale didn't answer. She sang louder and more beautifully than before, and as she did, the emperor could feel new life in his fingers and toes. "Little bird, why do you sing so sweetly? He does not care for you. He tossed you in a cage and then banished you from his empire." The Nightingale didn't answer. She sang with even more bravado, and her notes reached new heights. Death leapt off the emperor's chest. He placed the golden crown on the emperor's brow and the sword in his hand. He turned to the Nightingale. "Little bird, why do you sing so sweetly? If you don't stop singing, I'll be forced to take you with me." And it wasn't until she toppled over that her singing ceased. Death gingerly picked her up and then together they floated out the window and across the royal gardens, where the white roses grow, where the elder tree wafts its perfume on the breeze, and the fresh grass is moistened by mourners' tears. When the emperor awoke, strengthened and restored, the sun shone brightly in his chamber. He dressed himself in his imperial robes and then stood at the window. "Thank you, heavenly little bird. I know you well. I banished you from my kingdom once, and yet you have charmed away the evil faces from my bed, and rid me even of death with your sweet song." And with that, he held his golden sword pressed to his heart and bowed. The end, and good night. Travel far before the dawn's light.